Welcome to Know Before You Go for the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time. My name is Father Brian Walker. We hear in the Gospel today of the Samaritan, and I'm sure that most of us have often asked ourselves the question, who do we seem most like? Being a priest and reading this Gospel, I oftentimes wonder if people equate me with the priest in this passage. I would hope that I am not like this man at all. I wouldn't want people to think that I would leave them stranded on the road, especially after they've been hurt. I think of people I've known in various parishes that I've been in, and the last thing I would want to do is leave them and not fulfill what I would hope would be a simple Christian act of charity. I know that I'm not perfect, but to think that I would be lacking in that simplest of actions to assist someone else is the lowest thing that I can think of. Yet I also those people that I see standing on the corners with their cups asking for something, and I realize that I don't have enough for all. And so I have to drive off and leave someone standing there. Sometimes it is painful, but I know I can't help everyone. But this is very different. Why? Because it's not just someone standing on the side of the road. This is someone who has been left alone after being beaten and robbed. This past 4th of July is one that I will never forget. We are constantly being confronted with tragedies and mass shootings in the media, but this one for me hit home. A very good friend of mine was recently transferred to the parish in Highland Park, Illinois, where another tragedy struck. As the pastor of the parish, he was waiting to march in the parade. And as he was standing there with many parishioners, shots rang out. People ran, and he instructed them to go into the church building where they would all be safe, and they began to pray. Strangers helping strangers, but each one helping one another. They saw themselves as being under attack, but they also saw the need to help one another. One person holding a child asked someone else if they could look out for their child while they went back to look for the other parent. They trusted one another because they were in a situation where they had to depend on one another. All gathered together as a family and trusting that they could depend on one another. In other words, they were fearful of the person wielding the gun, but they trusted one another with their lives and even with their children. They were together, and no one passed over another to get away, but they saw each other as the victim, and they lent a helping hand. They were able to see themselves in one another. They didn't have to ask themselves if they were the priest or the Levite, but they saw all as one another working together, and they saw all as one being beaten and robbed, and they saw that they could trust one another. Sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to see one another as the victim and do our best to raise one another up. We can't just pass by and worry about ourselves, but we have to be and do the best to raise us all up together. Jesus constantly spoke of lifting one another up and not abandoning one another. His was a message of example and not just of words. He knew that going up to Jerusalem would not be easy. He spoke of his upcoming suffering and death, but it was all to demonstrate how much he loved us and cared for us, right up to the very end. Even after his death, he promised to be with us always, even to the end of time. He is the Good Samaritan for all of us. He is the one who is not always looked upon as being the most favored. There are many people like that in our society who are favored and some who are not so favored. But what he does in his life and in his example is he changes views. May we do our best to reflect the best, because it's definitely what the world needs now. Amen.